Hey friends, are you done with dating apps? Tired of swiping through profiles and superficial chats that go nowhere? Well, swipe left on those boring rituals. Introducing Done with Dating, the free podcast-driven dating platform that's bringing human interaction back. We sit down with incredible singles for real conversations on our weekly podcast. Listeners like you get to know them deeply, then apply to date guests or step into the mic yourself. Plus, we host experts that discuss the dating world and provide advice on self-improvement techniques when you are taking a break from dating or focusing on yourself. Made for the bold, built for connection. Your dating journey redefined through the mic. Head to donewithdating.co right now and apply. It's all free. Your perfect match is one episode away. Hey everybody. Today I have joining me Violet Lange. She's a cosmic matchmaker and relationship alchemist, and I am so excited about this conversation. Violet, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, I'm really excited too.
So when I saw your background, I was like, oh, this is really cool. As I mentioned to you, my girlfriend dabbles in like astrology stuff, but not too hardcore, but her friends, some of them are really hardcore into it. So I was like, all right, well, we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about other types of things out there. But your history and your experience is really incredible. So would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and your incredible story to get us started?
Yes, of course. I mean, my favorite story to tell is that I met my husband in a dream 3 weeks before we met in real life at a meetup event on lucid dreaming. No joke. So we have a really cosmic love story. And my life is woven between like the practical and the mystical. I have my background in engineering and business, but I'm also really into energy work and star seeds and chakra balancing and, all the things. And so I bring those different tools into helping people find love.
Very cool. Yeah, and I learned about the chakras. My girlfriend is a yoga instructor, 500-hour yoga instructor, so she's always talking to us about the chakras and stuff. Could you tell us a little bit about how you put together all these types of energies in your matchmaking process?
Yes. So I believe that we all have at least one, if not more, soulmates. And it's about choosing who really brings out the best in us and building a really good relationship. And modern dating and modern culture just makes it really hard to focus on values. It's like we get really distracted by the grass is greener and body types and, what we should say on the perfect profile and all of that stuff that, in my view, is less important than like being really connected to our essence and finding someone who is aligned and that we can create together versus like bonding on our pain. We're bonding on like, what is our divine union? How do we complement each other? And how do we want to have our love ripple out into the world? So when I work with someone, sometimes it's in a group program. Like I have this 6-week program called Love Harmonics. It's just $69 and we go through every element. So like water to clear out your past imprints or fire to activate your sexuality. And that's like not quite customized, but I do have people think about, their astrology and their gene keys and, their chakras and where they feel open and closed. But when I'm working with someone one-on-one, then I'm really doing this cosmic matchmaking of reading their energy, diving deep with them into everything from typology, like Enneagram or Myers-Briggs, to their chart and their star sign and all their different signs and houses. And it's exciting because I get to bring all of my different skills and tools, and each person needs something a little bit different, but I also have, my standard processes. And I have just found that either people come in that aren't as connected as they could be to their body, their sexuality, their desires, their needs, their boundaries. They're kind of floating and like, I'm just waiting for the one. Or they come in and they're so fatigued from like the dating apps that they need hope. And I love that that's part of your tagline is like reigniting hope for people, because we get so burdened and burnt out by like this 3D world with dating. And there's not as many good role models, I feel like, as we could have for healthy, loving relationships. So thank you to you and your girlfriend for being one of those.
Yeah, I'm trying, a little bit every day, just moving the ball forward for humanity, hopefully. Yeah.
Yes, seriously.
Yeah. But it's good. I mean, it's nice because the amount of people I've met through podcasting like yourself and others I've joined a community of people that already existed that are really accepting me, and it's been really nice. But it's exposed me to all this other types of stuff. And so, me probably 8 months ago, talking to you would have been like, well, in my mind, it was like more like someone walking through the Da Vinci Code movie with all these different dynamics and how you break apart the universe and all these different codes and stuff. Can you talk a little bit more about what you meant as far as the divine union and your theory of that?
Yes. So some people say the divine union is the same as something called twin flames. And that theory is rooted in this idea that we once were like one soul or one being, and then we in our evolutionary spiritual process decided to like split into a man and a woman. And that if you find your twin flame, you're kind of like reigniting that whole. I don't personally subscribe to that because I think it's limiting. It makes us think that we can only find one person in our life, and it reinforces that narrative of like the one who got away, or like,
Right.
well, what if my other half is in like Pakistan right now and how am I going to meet them? It starts to feel a little bit cumbersome. What I think is that we have, like I said earlier, many different people that we've had past lives with, or that we have similar like star system, star family that we come from, or different star family, but we have an opportunity to complement and create together. And I think divine union is something that we embody within, like our own feminine, our own masculine, our own, balancing of our chakras and our own wholeness that we're bringing into relationship. Because if we're looking for someone else to make us happy, that's kind of a recipe for disaster. However, I don't think we're meant to go through life alone. I think we need connection as part of our healing, and we are social creatures and we need touch and, all of those good things. So it's kind of both and.
So from that perspective, is this more like searching for somebody who's like an aligned partner?
Yeah, it's really about knowing what you want in terms of how do you want to feel in relationship. So instead of, oh, I need someone who makes this much money, it's, I want to feel cherished. Or instead of, I need someone who, looks a certain way, it's, I want to feel alive. I want to feel turned on. And like that could be through a certain body type, but so much of that is influenced by pornography and beauty standards and, just all of these things. And so I have found that the more that we're connected to how we want to feel in relationship, what we want to create with the other person, and what our values are, then the more likely we are to become the match for what we want. And that will make any matchmaking or any endeavor, whether it's online or meeting in real life, like that much more successful. The other thing I want to say is that I think a lot of people in their frustration with dating sometimes inadvertently close down. They're just like, oh, it's just not meant for me, or like, I should just give up on love, or we kind of dim our light and our desire. And especially a lot of really, in quotations, like successful people are like, oh, I'm just going to focus on work because that's what I'm good at. But then we have this longing, and it's really vulnerable. But the more we can connect with our longing for partnership and tell people like, hey, I'm really ready for love, and like, this is what I'm looking for. We're just starting to open all these doors so that whether we find the person online or in our dreams or through a matchmaker or through a setup or through a friend or at a party, it's like, I'm available for love. I'm ready. And like, it's coming to find us, and we're also finding it.
That it makes sense from my like personal perspective too, because I had kind of stopped the dating apps minus one. I ended up finding my girlfriend on a dating app, but it was kind of a low key kind of dating app. You only see like 3 matches and there's no carousel or anything.
Awesome.
And it was like I was like, I'm done with everything else, just kind of doing this because it's easier to keep the profile than not. And so we ended up connecting, but part of that was I was like, the things that I've been doing aren't working. And it's pretty much everything that you're talking about in terms of a lifestyle that I was trying to look for that I thought embodied the type of person that I want, fitness standard or things like that, that I thought embodied the type of person I want. And when I opened my horizons and just said, I'm just going to stop looking and kind of let things happen. About a month later, I ended up meeting my girlfriend. I had stopped like really engaging on the apps. She's a beautiful woman. But for some reason, there was more of a connection on like the personality side of things. And when we had our first date, our second date was like a couple days later. We couldn't wait to get in touch with each other. I mentioned to you before we got on the call, like she was like, what's your signs? Like, what's your star signs and stuff? So we went through the whole thing. And I had not really factored that in before, but she wanted to. And that's kind of a fun thing. And we did. And our star signs lined up pretty well, I guess.
Cool. Tell me more.
So let's see. So I am a Virgo. I was born in September. And so I'm a Virgo sun. I am a Virgo moon, like pretty heavy Virgo, and then a Gemini rising.
Awesome.
She is an Aries sun. She is a Taurus moon, and she's a Capricorn rising.
Mm-hmm.
And as like we went through the whole dynamic, I'm like, wow, that really it really fits who we are. And I used to joke that I was such a late Leo that I was a Virgo because I always say like I was laid back. But that was the vision, that was the person that I thought I was, like the self-image that I had. But the reality is like when I look at my work life and things like that, like I'm way more of a Virgo than I ever thought I was, but I almost thought it was a pejorative for me to be a Virgo.
Virgos are
Up until
great.
about like 2 years ago. Yeah. So anyway, we don't live our life by that, but I have definitely seen that a lot of the energy that we have complements each other. And in more of the day to day, like, her exterior persona is different than her interior persona,
Mm-hmm.
and her interior persona fits with her signs. And mine is very much the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And what we project to the world is that rising sign is totally
Yes.
different,
Yes.
which is really crazy.
I love that you're mentioning that because whether it's rising sign and like sun and moon or our dating profile and what it's actually like to be on a date with someone, there's a richness that emerges when we are able to drop in and be authentic. But in order to get there, people have to interact with us in some way, right? Whether it's a profile or at an event. And I just want to highlight what you said about, I narrowed things down. I just focused on one app. I let go of trying to, gamify everything or get it to be exactly the way I wanted. And what I heard in that is trust. They were just like, I'm just going to trust this process. I'm going to let go of feeling like I have to do it all myself. And then the universe, the universe did its magic.
Yeah, she did the same thing. So we basically went into this dating world. We're both like, we're done with this, but we're going to keep this little door open. And it has ended up the door that we both found at the same time. I mean, it was like so tight. We literally lived in the same space in Connecticut, almost 20 years ago together, and within a couple miles, and never met each other, and we weren't ready to meet each other. So
Yes.
it's really crazy that 20 years later, here we are. So it's really crazy.
I love that you're sharing that because I do think there's something about divine timelines and divine timing. And sometimes we think like, oh, it's just not my time or it's never going to happen. And I don't mean that we should use that as like fate or deterministic that we're not supposed to have love, but that we have to recognize there's a much bigger process and field that's at work than just our own kind of desires. And my husband and I found out later that we were in the same city in Europe the year after we graduated college, but we didn't, of course, like meet each other. And to your point, like we'd not have any connection. I was actually with my ex-husband at the time, my first husband. So it's amazing how our lives weave back together with the right connections. And that's part of this philosophy of cosmic matchmaking is like really get congruent as a soul, like clear your field of the distortions and blocks or the shoulds or the pressure or the, frantic kind of looking for your partner. So for some of us, it's like also doing ancestral work. And I geek out about, like you were talking about, the astrology of it or the typology of it. But what I heard in what you said about your signs is there's a lot of balance. You have Earth, and she also has Earth with her Capricorn rising, but you have like the air and the playfulness and the intellect, and then she has the fire, and her moon being in Taurus is also really earthy. And so, it just feels like there's good symmetry and balance.
Yeah, and that's exactly what her like friends said, in that kind of the ones who practice more in that deeper space. So it was nice because it was, we feel that the energy we have together is very good. And not to be like all mushy about it, but like it was, it's cool. It's like a data point of many data points that exist out there. And that actually transitions me to the question for you in terms of, as I mentioned, this is like a data point, but how much do you factor in those types of things? You know, and does it matter, or does it align a lot with, someone's values or their emotional availability or life goals? Like how how much does astrology or those types of things, how much does it typically play in with what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, from my own experience, there was definitely people I met where, in quotations, the stars were aligned, but I was projecting all this stuff onto them, kind of fantasizing and putting them on a pedestal. For instance,
Hmm.
someone I was dating, without talking too negatively, like he said he was really spiritual, but what he meant by that was like smoking a lot of pot. And it's like he thought that was spiritual, right? Or like, I thought that he was meditating, but he was really just kind of numbing out. And so yeah, we had this cool connection in some ways, and it should have, in quotations, worked, but we felt very differently about like our life path and how we wanted to grow. He had gone through trauma when he was younger. I had too, but he hadn't really done the healing work from that. And so we had similarities in our chart of having hard childhood experiences, but we had different choices on how we responded to that. So I think it's a both and, right? Like you could be with someone or on a date with someone who has really good intentions, really good values, and you're just not really feeling any chemistry because maybe you're too similar or, there's just something that isn't really clicking. You've maybe,
Yeah,
I'm assuming you've had experiences where like, that person's really cool, but like I get more of a friend vibe. It just
totally.
like lighting you up.
Hmm.
And so you need to have both. You need to have that kind of spark and chemistry. And sometimes the chemistry comes through, yeah, that magnetism of difference and polarity and charge. But obviously, you don't want to have like too much conflict and you want to be able to work through the conflict that you do have. So I've had clients who looked at the chart of someone they were dating and been like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And then I hated to be the voice of reason, but I was kind of like, okay, but let's go slow. Like, let's see how they show up. If they're in integrity, if you have similar values, if you can communicate about things that are important. And it didn't work out. And then I have another client who saw the chart of the person she started dating, was like, I don't know about this, like maybe. And now they've been married for like 5 years. And there's enough there that it's a really good point of connection. So I think it's about yeah, like what is emerging in the relationship, not about like what's perfect on paper. Because perfect on paper, as we were talking earlier, can be a little bit of a recipe for disaster because we get so caught up in what our idea of it might be versus who the person actually is.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to kind of break through one more element or one more component of this, and then have you talk about how you actually do it with your program. You actually touched on it a little bit, but how about the elemental pairings? How often do you see those marriages show up more to be in more like successful long-term matches that you've seen?
I'm so glad you're asking that question because I think it's really important. And our signs in astrology can point to the elements because every sign is either a water, air, fire, or earth. But you can also just think about it in terms of how you experience someone. So someone who's really watery will be really like fluid and access their emotions quickly. And, someone who's fiery will be kind of like bold and we all know that sort of person. And um
Mhm.
when I was talking earlier about divine union, I didn't get a chance to share this, but it feels appropriate now that I feel like what we're looking for sometimes is a lock and a key, and that it's not just a one dimension, like, oh, this person is, their sun sign and my sun sign. It's the moon, it's the rising, it's these other aspects. When we're looking for this key and lock, it's kind of like, what is the balance? So you could also think of that as masculine and feminine. Like my mind is actually pretty masculine. Like I love penetrating conversations. I love organizing things. My Jupiter is in Virgo. And so I'm like very into kind of order and synthesis and all of these things. And my husband is super creative. He was in film industry for a while. He loves writing stories. He loves art. And it's not that he's also super intelligent, but we think in different ways. And then emotionally, it's almost the opposite. Like I'm way more emotional and he's like just pretty steady. His moon is actually in Virgo too. So he's just steady, meat and potatoes, kind of like, here's how I'm feeling. Like sometimes there's a big show of it, but not usually. Like I'm much more dramatic. And so I think about that in the elements too, is it's like, where can you find balance? I've seen couples come together that are all air and fire and they just burn each other out. It's like there's no grounding there. And then I've also seen couples come together that are just water and it's like endless processing of feelings, like
Yeah, yeah,
over and
right.
over. And so I think what makes it hard is that you want balance, but you don't want such extreme opposites. Like if someone was just all air and fire and their partner was all like earth and water, there just wouldn't be quite enough overlap. So it's kind of like the Venn diagram where you want some overlap, but not so much that you're the exact same and you're boring. And it's, like I said, the endless processing of things. So for instance, like my husband has more earth than I do. Not just in his chart, but like in his constitution. In Ayurveda, they talk about like the doshas. And so he's more kapha, like he's just a little more like grounded and steady and solid, like in his body type. And I'm more vata, kind of like a little bit all over the place. But we meet in our fire element. He's a Sag and I'm a Leo. So we both have a decent amount of fire. He brings more grounding and I bring more air, but we have that overlap there. So that's kind of how I think about it, is knowing what is your kind of elemental makeup. And then also bringing in what you're missing on the way to finding partners. So for instance, because I can get a little bit out there with the air, I had to do my own yoga practices and working with like healthy foods and like ways that I could connect more to my body. So I wasn't spiritually bypassing so much. Or it's kind of out there, but like yoni eggs, which are these crystals you can use in your yoni to heal sexual trauma and all of that stuff. So I think anyone who's listening who's single, it's like, know your elemental makeup, whether that's your dosha or your signs or just how you view yourself, and look for someone that has some complementary aspects but some overlap. And in the meantime, give yourself some of what you're looking for so that you don't get too imbalanced.
So it does sound like if you just look at the elements, that there's a lot of ways to create a roadmap with who you are and then what might be a good match for you.
Mm-hmm.
And like you had talked about the fire and water, to me, it sounds like very fluid relationship with a lot of emotion, right? That could have like a 0 to 60 really quickly from the way you were describing it. I'm a simpleton when it comes to a lot of the stuff, but what you're saying does make a lot of sense to me in terms of how it could be used in terms of assessing a person and using that to assess the opportunity to match them with somebody else. Can you explain like how you take all these things together and use it to create the matches that you do?
Yes. So for instance, I am thinking of a client that had a lot of earth and a lot of water. This is actually a male client of mine. But he came to me feeling kind of frozen. He was like, I'm 50 years old. I've been single for 8 years. I just thought it would have happened by now. Like I'm doing the things and nothing is really moving. And it's not that he didn't have access to his fire or his air, but he was just kind of in that stuck place. And you could see in his body posture, his shoulders were kind of moving forward and his mouth was a little bit drawn back tight. And he would just kind of shake his head like, how did I get here? How did I get here? You know? And I felt for him. I really felt for him because there's so many people that have that story, right? Of it's been a while since I've dated or found relationship. And is this ever going to happen for me? And then we can get heavy, right? That like heaviness of the earth element. And so I worked with him not only on like moving his body and taking up more space and like getting a little more fire in his physical posture, but also more drive and air because he had gone through a career pivot. He worked for himself, but he wasn't communicating that. It was all kind of behind the scenes. So it sounds counterintuitive, but I was like, you need to like put this on your website. You need to like really communicate air element, you know, who you are and what you're up to and like have some drive for your life other than finding a partner. And it sounds mean, but like when someone is like, the only thing that matters to me is finding a partner, it's kind of like off-putting, you know, it's a little bit like, it feels a little desperate and contracted in that way. And I don't know, there's just something that's like less sexy, I think, than someone who's like, I'm awesome and I love and I want to have a partnership, but I'm also doing these other, you know, cool things. So I helped him balance out his own elements. And then he ended up going to a wedding in Italy and meeting his partner at a yoga retreat that he booked kind of randomly just by inspiration the week before. Now they have like a really cool love story and I feel like is very much meant to be, but he had to kind of get out of his shell and he had to really be in touch with his desires. So a little detail of that is when they met at the yoga retreat, she was kind of skeptical. She's like, you're some American. And she's like, do you just want to have sex? Like, what is this about? And he had to be like, no, I'm actually looking for a partnership. I have a wedding next week in Italy. I would love for you to come with and let's just see what happens. But my intentions are really pure and this is what I'm looking for. And this is what I've learned in my love life. And like, I think had we not done our work together, even if would have met her, he would have been in that kind of frozen, hopeless place, but he was now able to communicate with passion what he was looking for, and now they're together. So the balancing work is the work that I do with someone. That's kind of like the inner work, and me seeing their pattern, seeing their field, seeing their elemental makeup, and giving them that medicine of how to get them back in balance. And sometimes I do put people together because my husband is a guy who works with men. So he works with men and I work mainly with women, although there is some overlap. But when I say cosmic matchmaker, it's not so much that I have like, a huge list of people, although I do leverage my network. It's that I get people into that place where it's just inevitable that they meet their soulmate because they're so aligned and magnetic and balanced and clear on what they want and expressing that in the world.
Yeah, you just said it. I was going to actually say it's like you create this magnetic personality by just pulling all their elements together and who they are,
Mhm.
because you make them interesting. That example you gave, that guy sounded boring and desperate, right? And you created a more of a full picture of a person that wanted to find someone, but it wasn't the only thing they were doing in
Yes.
life. And clearly, he goes to a yoga retreat in another country, and like that's what he does, right? So that's amazing.
Let me give another example really quick of a different kind of balancing so people can maybe see themselves in one of these two examples.
Sure.
There was a woman I worked with who was a lawyer, super successful, but she was applying all the same strategies she applied to her career, to her dating life. So she was on like 5 apps and like going out all the time and kind of knew how to play the game a little bit, was
Mhm.
really good at like getting first dates and even getting second dates. But then it felt like after 3 weeks to a month or two, the shoe would always drop. And it's because she wasn't really showing up authentically, right? She had a lot of air, like intellect, and a lot of fire, a lot of drive, but she wasn't in touch with her emotions and she wasn't really grounded and connected to her body. So she'd have, like sexual experiences thinking, oh my gosh, this is it. And then the person would kind of ghost or breadcrumb her and she'd feel heartbroken. So then she's like, okay, next time I have to try harder. I have to be more charming. I have to be more, the cool girl. I have to text the perfect thing. And then like there's just so much in this intensity of how she was seen and playing the
Mhm.
game. And we worked to bring her more into her body. And she had some trauma from childhood that we worked through. And just this real reckoning of, wait, I don't need someone who's also a high powered lawyer. I need someone who is driven in a way that I can respect, but who creates emotional safety for me, where I feel like I can trust them and the other shoe isn't going to drop, regardless of when we have intimacy or not. And so the person she's now with, that they've been married since 2019, he's an entrepreneur and he runs his own auto body shop, which is very different than like this high intellect entrepreneur or lawyer. But he's very driven, he's smart, he's successful. They bond on like they're both wanting to do something in their life that feels successful, but they do it in different ways. And it's so funny because she had to train her nervous system to go slower versus like, dating all these people and doing all these things. So the last part of the story is that they had had 5 dates and he hadn't kissed her. And so she was starting to be like, what is wrong? I'm used to men like really wanting
Yeah.
the physical aspect. And then when she told him on their 5th date, she's like, I'm just wondering, like, are you into this or is this just a friend thing? I'm noticing you haven't kissed me. He's like, the fact that I keep asking you out definitely shows that I'm still interested. And if you need me to like make a move sexually in order to feel into this, maybe we don't value the same thing. And she was like, oh shit. Like he totally
Wow.
saw
Yeah.
her. And then, they ended up being physical like within a few more weeks. So it wasn't like he was celibate or wanting that or anything, but he just had a slower burn. But had she not got into more of her earth and her water and her flow and her grounding, she would have probably brushed him off and just been like, oh, that guy's not interested. But she was willing to
Yeah.
be authentic. That's her water. Her water is her authenticity of her emotions. I'm feeling nervous because you haven't kissed me. And then they had a real dialogue.
Yeah, that is really cool. It's two totally different examples, right? That
Yes.
that just shows how your process can work.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Well, do you have any parting thoughts in terms of a, a piece of advice that you'd like to give to listeners about what they can do if they feel like they're stuck in a rut? What would be that first pivot that they make or mindset shift?
Yeah, thank you for asking that because I do think so many people feel stuck or hopeless. And the message I want people to know is that you can alchemize anything, right? Like alchemy is just turning one thing into another thing, and you can harmonize anything, even if you've had heartbreak or divorce or sexual trauma or, complex trauma or something. Like your field is always wanting to be harmonized, but sometimes you have to take action. And we were talking about this earlier, right? Like you did a health thing to increase your health, and like it wasn't
Yes.
always pretty, but it was a part of the
Right.
process. And so
Right.
my number one thing is don't try to do it yourself, right? Like work with a coach or a therapist, or take that love codes course that I mentioned that my friend does on astrology, or reach out to me. I have a 6-week course called Love Alchemy. I'm kind of changing it to Love Harmonics, but anyway, it's the same sort of deal where we walk through the elements. It's just $69, so it can give you that blueprint and stuff. So it's taking inspired action, and it's knowing that you can create the love that you want. You don't have to just do your love life like your parents did, or what you see from some rom-com or something like that. And I think where I'm going with that is it's like taking the new perspective. That's part of the air element. Like, oh, maybe I can see this differently. I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong with me. I just don't have the right tools and skills. And no one ever really taught me like how to be in harmony with myself and how to create a good relationship.
Yeah. No, that's great. That is awesome. So where can people find you and sign up for the courses and listen to more of you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So if you go to my website, it's Violet Lange. There's an E on the end of Lange.com/love alchemy. That's where you can find the 6-week course for $69. It's starting September 10th. And then you can find me on Instagram, although I'm not great at Instagram, so you'll probably be underwhelmed, but it's Violet Love Lange. And then if you wanted to explore one-on-one work with me, where I do like the 6-month to soulmate cosmic matchmaking, you can just email me at my email. It's violet@violetlang.com, but I'll give you all this stuff to put in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah, excellent. All right. And then you said there's a start date for your course. So does it run every 6 to 8 weeks or so?
Yeah, so every season or twice a year,
Okay.
depending on my schedule and everything. I have 2 little kids, but this year it's starting September 10th, and then I'll do it again in the spring around Valentine's Day.
Awesome. Well, Violet, thanks so much for this. I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot from you on this. So thanks again for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and for opening the conversation and broadening the dialogue beyond just, the apps. It's like the emotional part with the hope, and then the spiritual part. And I hope listeners take something from this.
Thanks. Yeah. And if anybody is listening and is interested in the idea of coming on as a matchmaking episode candidate, please come on, because I've had some really good people come on and they're looking for their other half. But again, thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
So if you're done with endless swiping and ready for something real, don't miss a single episode. Hit that subscribe button right now on your favorite podcast app and never miss the bold conversations that could change your dating life forever. Every week, we bring you incredible singles, excellent advice, raw stories, and real opportunities to connect, all for free. Subscribe today, apply at donewithdating.co, and turn your next listen into your next date. Your perfect match is waiting on the other side of the mic. It doesn't matter where you live, someone local is listening and will want to date you. We'll see you in the next episode. Subscribe now.